Thank you all for coming out on a rather chilly December evening. A special thank you to all of you who have accepted the challenge of sitting in one of the front row seats. It is very much appreciated. My name's Robin Lustig. I'm a journalist and broadcaster. I spent more than 20 years broadcasting with the BBC. And over the course of my career, I've actually reported from many of the countries where MSF does some of its very important work. We're calling this evening an evening of storytelling because it's going to be a little bit different from what you might call a routine evening of presentations. The idea is that each of our speakers is going to tell you a story or stories, anecdotes if you like, about the work that they've done, and the hope is that it will give you a better idea, a better understanding of the work that MSF does, what it is like for the people who actually do that work. The stories they tell will be united by a common theme, and that theme is hope. Because hope really underlies all humanitarian work, the hope of those carrying out the work, that they will be able, at least in some part, to alleviate suffering. And of course, the hope of those whom they help, that their lives will improve and that they will be able to live full, healthy, and productive lives. We have 4 speakers for you this evening. 2 of them are here with us. 2 of them are not, for reasons which I will explain as the evening progresses. We'll have a short break after the first 2 speakers have told their stories to enable you to get up and stretch your legs, go to the bar, get a drink, find the loos if that's what you need, and then come back for the last 2 storytellings. You will have an opportunity to ask questions of the 2 speakers who are here with us. For fairly obvious reasons, you will not be able to ask questions of those who are not here. I'm confident that you're going to find it an enthralling and interesting evening. Before I introduce the first of our speakers, could I just ask you to take a moment to ensure that your phones are either turned to silent or are off. We would not wish to be disturbed during the course of the evening. Our first speaker, who is here with us, is Becky Ferguson. She is a pediatric nurse based in London. Her special interest is pediatric emergencies. She's worked in the humanitarian field since 2016. She's done 2 different assignments for MSF, one in Sierra Leone in West Africa, and more recently in Afghanistan. And I think it's about Afghanistan that she is going to be telling her story. So Becky, over to you.
Hello. I'm a little bit nervous. Nice to meet you all. So I'm here tonight to talk to you about my favorite place in the whole wide world, a place that not many of you would assume we would associate feelings of hope and peace and joy, but they're feelings I very much felt while I was there. I'm going to talk to you about the second time I visited Afghanistan and worked in the city of Herat in the West. There's a theme that people use about Afghanistan, and the language that we use when we talk about this place, the people who've been there. And there's this word that comes up all the time. So much so I believe in this, I have it tattooed on myself. And that word is magnet. The feelings that you feel there stay in your heart forever. Or maybe you just leave a piece of your heart behind there. And that's why people who've always been there and worked there feel the need to go back, which is why I did. So I'll give you some background. I'm sure most of you have watched Afghanistan on the news, so you know the situation. About October last year when I was there, everything was pretty bad. Food was expensive, nobody had jobs, and the healthcare system was in free fall. It was how it was described to me when I was briefed the mission. Things are bad. The staff were not paid, there was no medicine, but yet the staff were still going to work. So I think this is probably the most incredible thing. We arrived at a hospital and worked in collaboration with Ministry of Health, and we worked collaboratively with the staff who had not been paid for 4 months, and they were still there showing up every day. So this gives you a little bit of an idea of the spirit of the Afghan people. In Herat, we had several projects, which was kind of crazy. One was an inpatient therapeutic feeding center, which had been there a while. And while I was there, we were opening a pediatric emergency room, a pediatric ICU. And just to add a little more to our plates, there was a measles epidemic. So we squeezed in opening a specialist measles unit as well in 6 months. So a bit of madness. All these new facilities mean we have to hire lots of new staff. To give you like context of numbers wise, I think when I arrived, we had about 100 nurses. And when I left, we had about 600 nurses, give or take. And it was my job as the training nurse to train all of those new faces. So I was that first international face that they saw, the first face of MSF, welcoming them into the team. I was pretty lucky because I got to be the good cop, always offering nice, fun trainings and that listening ear and the supportive, nice, kind words, including a mistake is a gift because it allows us to learn. I said this to them a lot because then it also allowed me to make mistakes if they caught me on the back foot when they asked me a question. It was pretty crazy. It was probably the most insane roller coaster I've ever been on my life. Only survivable due to the people that I met and worked with there. Opening 3 facilities in such a short time with so many sick children, and we had to teach all of our staff to care for them to the standards of MSF that we use, the amazing care that we give. So I had to think a lot about how to organize my thoughts and share some of that time with you and share that feeling with you because there's so many things I could say. So the first thing I did was reach out to my Afghan team. If anyone knows any Afghan people, you know how beautifully they speak, and I wanted to try and get some of their words to share with you. They once told me that I brutalized their native language by speaking it like English in a boring way. So I asked them for a description of what they thought hope was. And in reaching out, I had an absolute avalanche of offers for help, reminding me again how incredible this team is and how willing they are to help anyone with quite literally anything. My favorite quote came from one of our nurses, summing up the theme of their comments pretty much to me perfectly. So I chose it as the one to share with you, which is, there is a reason behind the struggles of human beings, perhaps a sacred cause to make you live another day. It's called hope. So I thought that was really nice. So I'm going to try and share a few short stories with you, again, along this theme of hope, which I thought I would start with some of the struggles we had and then what we kind of did to try and overcome those and keep ourselves hopeful and full of spirit. So the first big one, leaving the hospital every night, because the work is never, ever done. And you feel like you want to be there to support the night shift team. But as the sun goes down, unfortunately, the international staff team have to go home and leave our faith in the absolutely amazing night shift staff. When I tell you it's hard to leave, I'm talking about 3 patients in every ICU bed. I'm talking about 700 to 900 children through the triage every day. Absolute madness, just people everywhere all the time, and very, very sick children everywhere all the time. But we would get back every night after this horrible moment of having to leave and thinking, oh, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, I didn't do this, and just have tea, toast, and jam and debrief the day. And this was our little routine, the pediatric medical team, to talk about our day, because if we saw each other in the day, it was probably during a moment of absolute chaos. So we didn't have time to talk and debrief. So we took this sort of half an hour just to chat and meditate over what's happened during the day, try and get some laughs, and then continue our evening. Okay, another struggle. Everyone has this struggle in life anyway, getting up and getting on with your day. First thing in the morning, getting out of bed. It's not easy for anyone, right? But if you've been working very, very long days for a lot of time with no days off, it's even harder. So we decided we were going to have energetic music time in the car every day, which was a Japanese doctor that worked with us taught us a Japanese pop song. So we learnt that every day, another line. And when she left, we switched to Pirates of the Caribbean theme tune. So yeah, we banged that on and got ourselves psyched to get out to the hospital and greet everyone with a smile rather than oh, I'm so tired face. So probably the saddest and the most difficult struggle was the measles ICU. I came back from my leave to find before we built our big specialist NICE area, we had a container full of beds, full of the sickest measles patients. Like, measles is a preventable disease, and seeing children suffer from this, and they suffer. It's it's awful to watch these children because they're suffering so much. And again, we're talking 3 or 4 children in a bed, all of them very sick, nurses running around here, there, and everywhere. And this first day, myself and the Afghan translator, Mazia, we just walked around and showed the mothers how to clean the eyes and the mouths of the children because they get very sticky, very painful eyes and mouths. So we did that. But after a morning of that, we were pretty desolate in ourselves, myself and the translator. So I said, we're going to do something like fun and motivating this afternoon to bring back the hope. So I made her translate a song I made up to the tune of a Korean pop song. We videoed it, and it was about flushing IV cannulas for the nurses to learn from. And then I shared that with all of the staff. I think I might have been delirious at that point, but it went down a storm, so all good. But yeah, that was another little moment of like, we have to keep the hope going, because if we get sucked into this like sadness and desolateness, then we're never going to survive, okay? And this is MSF, you have to keep going on. The first month after we opened our ER and ICU was really, really heavy. I've already told you, like 700 kids a day. We were expecting 100 kids a day. So it was a bit of a tidal wave. And I ran a training day for our Ministry of Health colleagues because they hadn't had some training in how to triage. Sorry. I told you I'm nervous, shaky hands. So I asked them for some feedback. Like, what do you think? We've come here, we've joined you running this hospital. What do you think about the difference? How do you feel about it? And one of the nurses, Halima, told me, before you were here, children died waiting to see the doctor. Nobody came to this hospital because it was not a good hospital. We didn't have any organization. We didn't assess the patients. They just waited, and many of them died, so nobody came. So it's a really good thing that you have a busy hospital, because it means people love this hospital. We have medicine, we have doctors, we have nurses. Children don't die in the line waiting for the doctor. So when she told me that, again, I think I was pretty tired, so I cried. But we actually heard from staff that had worked in the previous facility that we're making a difference here. The people trust us in this city. And that was a thing I really spoke to the staff about a lot. Like, we're here to help your community, so I need you to work together with us to build this trust so that people use this facility, because we're here to help you. So to hear that from someone was just amazing. And then a final little story, a special patient of ours, a baby called Nitayesh, who was 8 months old, who arrived to us so sick. She was with us for 2 weeks in the ICU, completely unresponsive. Her mother asked us every day, when is she getting better? And every day we had to say, we don't know, we just watch and we wait. And slowly, she did get better. She smiled, she started to play. We sent her home. And I think because I was always in the chaos and in the bad parts and where the sickest children were, I never got to see these happy stories of the children going home. So sending this patient home was like, wow, okay, we do good things. Not some people survive, and we are making people survive. This is good. I could go on and on and on and tell you little stories about this, and I'm happy to. If anyone wants to talk to me in any of the breaks, I'm available. But what I really want to leave you with is how I felt every day in Herat. I met everyone every day with a smile and some patience and a greeting. And this is something you learn from the Afghans, because no matter how busy you are, you must stop and you must say, hey, how are you? How is your family? How was your night? And take this time to greet people with some warmth and kindness. And this is what makes it such a special place. Doesn't matter how busy you are, you take time to care for people. And that's their culture. I didn't teach them that, that's them. Anytime I wanted to organize training, it was overwhelming enthusiasm. It was like, please, more training, more lessons. They're proud, amazing people, and they're proud for a reason, because they want to do a good job. And we're there helping them to do a good job. After 40 years of war, you would not expect open hearts and minds from a place. but I wish you could somehow feel the warmth and the soul of this place. And I hope that you can hear it in my voice and my words to you, that you feel this too. If you ever meet anyone from Afghanistan, I hope you have the chance to talk with them about their life and their journey and their hopes, because many of them have hopes for a better future. I believe that MSF brings hope to Afghanistan. We've been there a really long time. We've only left when we really had to, and we came back and we stayed. In August, we stayed. The nurses I spoke to who were there in August, they just stayed in the hospital and carried on working, which I think is amazing. We continued running our free, accessible healthcare services, and we expanded those services, and we're still expanding them now. I believe that the children and the next generation are the hope of the future of a country. And by caring for the children in Herat, which is what we're doing, we're caring for the future of this country. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Do you have some pictures? Do you have some pictures to show?
Yeah, sorry, there's some pictures. So this is Afghanistan. Herat is over here in the west near Iran. I've also worked up here in the north in Panjshir before. Very beautiful country, very big. Cool, next slide. Cute baby. This isn't a real baby. This is a mannequin. This is the nurses doing some training. And this is just a cute baby because everyone likes cute babies. Next slide. This is our triage area. So this is a quiet day. On a busy day, this would have like 700 people at 10 a.m. So this looks nice and organized. It's after we got things together a bit more. The first days did not look so beautiful. Next slide. This is our ICU. So to give you an idea of what it looks like to have 4 children on a bed with their mothers, which obviously takes up even more space, trying to deliver high quality care in this, which we still managed to do, and I'm really proud of. Yeah, I hope that gives you a bit more of a visualization of really the situation we're working. Every bed looked like this. Next slide. This is one of our ER rooms. So the doctors are assessing the patients. Again, you can see there's people absolutely everywhere. So yeah, this guy's sleeping, don't worry. This is the yellow zone. Not everyone in here is not that sick. Cool. Next slide. Cute baby. We'll end on a cute baby. Thank you.
I would like now to move on to our second speaker, who I'm afraid isn't here with us, but she does have a good excuse. She's just tested positive for COVID. Fortunately, her symptoms are extremely mild, so she was determined to fulfill her obligations to you all by what I hope is the miracle of modern technology. She will join us by Zoom. Her name is Prue Jarrett. She is a pediatrician. She's just back from having spent 10 months in the Central African Republic as a doctor. It was her first assignment with MSF. She usually works in London as a pediatrician, and she is going to tell us a little bit about her experiences in the Central African Republic. Over to you, Prue.
Good evening, everyone. I hope that you can hear me well. First of all, I'm so sorry that I'm not there in person. I was hoping to be there with you and be able to discuss and take questions, but unfortunately, COVID is still with us, and today it's with me. So I'm here, and I hope that you get something from it anyway. So my name is Prue. I'm a pediatrician. I normally work in East London, and in 2021, I took my first assignment with Médecins Sans Frontières in the Central African Republic. So I'm going to tell you today the story of one of my first patients, who I'm going to call Mariam. And I'm going to tell you the story of looking after her. But the other thing that I'm hoping that you can go away with from today is to have some knowledge, something in your mind about the Central African Republic. This is a place that is really the definition of a neglected crisis. So I want to tell you something about this place and for you to leave with that in your mind. So the Central African Republic is a very big country, size of France, but very sparsely populated rural country, about 5 million people. And as the name describes, it's in the middle of the African continent. But despite conditions which put the Central African Republic right at the bottom of almost any measure that you can find of wealth, health, well-being of the population, it remains essentially invisible to people in kind of rich Western countries like the UK, donor countries, and unfortunately, it is consistent that funding calls for humanitarian aid to Central African Republic are missed. Year on year, there is not enough money going to the needs of this population. MSF has been in the Central African Republic for quite a long time. So I think we were first there in 1997. But our most recent reasons for being there are the outbreak of civil war, which began in 2013. In 2013, there was a coup. The government was overthrown by a kind of amalgamation of armed groups coming from the northeastern part of the country. They came into the capital, overthrew the government, and triggered off a cycle of violence and displacement across the whole country, which has been going on ever since. And this is a kind of multi-dimensional, complex conflict along religious, ethnic, geographical lines, the legacy of which continues to this day. And the stats on this are quite striking. The population is essentially living outside of control of the government. The vast majority of the country is outside of government control. And about 1 in 4 of the Central African population is displaced. And today, about 3/4 of all of the health services in the country are being run by NGOs like MSF. Now, from my point of view as a pediatrician, one thing that's really important for me to know about the Central African Republic is that the population is really very young. This is a population in which the average age is about 18 years, and something like 1/5 of the population are children under 5. So a very young population and a lot of children, so a large burden of pediatric illness in this population. And it's a very dangerous place to be a child. Imagine this scenario, something actually quite common among families that I saw. There's a pregnant woman, she's undernourished, she's had malaria during her pregnancy, and then she gives birth at home without any assistance from a skilled professional. And because of these reasons, her baby's born small and vulnerable. Birth defects don't go identified, they're left untreated. And because of her nutritional status, she struggles to produce enough breast milk, but just manages to get this baby through the first months of life. However, violence coming into their village means that they have to flee, and the baby misses all of the routine vaccinations that they should have had in the first month's year of life. And she just keeps getting sick over and over again. But the last time that they went to the local health post, the army had taken over this structure as a military shelter, and there were no health personnel and no resources for anyone to look after her at that time. And luckily she recovered. But then the next insult comes, there's the dry season. This is a period in which crops don't grow. And nowadays, the rains are becoming less and less predictable, the periods of dryness ongoing, the family goes hungry. And the young children either become very thin, malnourished, or bloated because of not having enough to eat. The older children go out and they're trying to sell anything really that they can to make money for the family, and they don't go to school. And they're watching the older children in their communities looking for a sign of what their own future holds. And they see some of these kids have been kidnapped, they've gone to work in the mines, or they've gotten killed in fighting. And the girls are scared about what will the men do. And they all wonder when they grow up whether anything's going to be better. and the emotions of grief and fear are part of their daily lives, and hope is few and far between. So this kind of family story, this scenario, is the backdrop to Mariam's story when I met her. So I went to Bambari, which is the second town of Central African Republic, and I was working in the hospital as a pediatrician. And it was about my second week of being there. I was really still trying to figure things out. How did the place work? What was my role? How was I going to be able to do my work? And after our morning handover, we had a meeting at 7:30 every morning. After that, I decided to go and this day wander around each of the departments to get a bit of a feel for how they worked and what was going on that day. This wasn't something I always did. I just did it that day. And I went along with my nursing colleague, Corinne, one of the nursing managers, also from the UK. And we went first past the triage section of the hospital, and the triage is essentially like our A&E department. And it was at that time in this kind of semi-temporary tents made of kind of this hard fabric. And so we went in, we dip under the low-hanging doorway, fabric doorway, and you go into this kind of thick yellow light of the triage room. And it was eerily quiet that day. There weren't the normal patients kind of lining up outside, children, parents, people waiting to be seen. It was quiet. And I went in and I could see Gilles, one of our very excellent nursing supervisors, in there. And I could see that he was working on a patient over in the kind of resuscitation area of the triage. And so I approached just to see what was going on. And I could see that there was a little girl there, maybe 5 years old. This was Mariam. And she looked a bit pale. She wasn't really moving. She was wrapped up in a survival blanket, a kind of shimmering goldish survival blanket. And I could see that she had some kind of plastic tubing, a cannula in her mouth. And that was to keep her airway open. And at that moment was when I started to feel quite worried. This is a sick child. And so I said to Gilles, what's going on? What's the story? And he said, severe malaria. She's unconscious. Her blood sugar is so low, I can't get a reading on the machine. Her hemoglobin's 1.5, and it should be something like 10 or 12. He'd already given her a glucose infusion. So I made a quick assessment myself. And it goes like this: A for airway. So the airway's open, but she's unconscious. That's why he's put the plastic tubing in to make sure that it doesn't get obstructed. B for breathing. Okay, she's breathing, but it looks kind of slow and the movement of her chest isn't quite normal. And I tried to get an oxygen reading with the normal saturation probe on her finger, testing all the fingers, thumbs, ear. Nothing's coming up. Her fingers are so cold and shut down that it's not giving me anything. So I move on. C for circulation. Well, I can just about feel her pulses. They're there, but it's pretty weak and it's going kind of slowly. And I'm starting to feel more and more concerns. Temperature, 33 degrees, far below the normal. Blood sugar, again, we're checking with the machine. It just says low. It can't even give us a figure. It can't figure out how low it actually is. So I'm worried. This is a child who is about to go into cardiac arrest, and she needs blood. She needs blood urgently. And Gilles tells me that he's already sent the mother to the transfusion lab to get her own blood tested and to give a donation. So I say, how long is it going to take? And he says, maybe 15, 20 minutes, not so long, but we don't have that much time. And so we start a debate between ourselves. Basically, we know that we need more people and we need more stuff if we're going to save the life together of this child. And really, we need to move the patients, because here in triage, we don't have everything that we need and we don't have everyone that we need. But if we move the patient, we need to carry her, probably just in our arms, up the hill, up to the intensive care ward. There's no paved corridors, there's no trolleys with wheels to move patients around. And so that journey itself is a risk for her deterioration. And, you know, we're dithering back and forth. What should we do? And Gilles just insists, let's move the patient. And I'm new, and I just, you know, do what Gilles says. So we go. And I send Corinne, my nursing colleague, ahead, and I say, please run ahead, tell intensive care we're coming. They need to make a bed available, and they need to be themselves ready to receive a sick patient, all hands on deck. And so she runs ahead of us. So we get to intensive care. There's an empty bed, just a big wrought iron, you know, adult-sized bed. The nurses are there, they're on standby. We reevaluate. Again, I'm putting the probe on her feet, her fingers, trying to get some numbers, some information. But she's so cold, her circulation's shutting down, and I can't get a reading. She's deteriorating. And the blood still isn't ready. So I'm checking her again. Her pulse is now getting to the point where we might have to start giving her CPR. And so I just start to think that we need to do something a bit unorthodox here. We need to give her some fluids into her IV cannula and just push them in fast to reboot her circulation while we're waiting for the blood. And the team understandably looks around and they look a little bit hesitant about this plan. But someone goes and they grab a 50 ml syringe, a big syringe, and a bag of fluids, and they start pushing it through. And finally, a bag of blood arrives. But before we can give it, we have to check that this is going to be the right match, the right blood match for her. But it just seems impossible to get that check done. We have to take a prick of blood from the end of her finger, and nothing's coming out. So just squeezing to get that 1 or 2 drops that we need to do the check is taking forever. And thankfully at that moment, Junior, another amazing nurse supervisor that we had in Bambari, he came along, he took charge, and he got the check done. But at this point, I'm watching her. I'm standing at the end of the bed while the nurses are around doing the things that they need to do. And I'm watching her, and I can see that her breathing's changing. And she started to gasp. And this is a kind of infrequent, deep, agonal kind of breathing. And it's time that we have to start supporting her breathing. So Corinne goes with the bag and the bag valve mask you might have seen, and is doing breathing for her. Nurse Patrick, he comes along, he's attaching the end of that bag valve mask to the oxygen concentrator. And then Solange, one of the other nurses, she gets the suction device to come and make sure that we've got the nice, clear, free of secretions in the mouth. And this suction device requires her to stand on the pedal with her full body weight so that we get the suction through the tubing. And the team start to get the transfusion ready, and they're priming the lines that we need to give it. But me and Junior, we're standing at the end of the bed and we're looking at her, and we know that unless we do something quickly, that we're not going to save we're not going to save Mariam's life. And so together we decide on something difficult. We decide that this is one of those rare circumstances that we need to push the blood through her IV line fast, syringe by syringe, quickly, not over the standard 3 hours or 4 hours that you would normally take to give a blood transfusion. This is not the safest way of giving blood. It's not a good way of doing it in the best kind of clinical practice. But in this scenario, it's the only thing that's going to give us a chance as a team to save Mariam's life. And they again, look unsure. But Junior steps in. He doesn't hesitate. He gets his gloves on. He snaps them on. He instructs his colleagues what he wants them to do, and he begins. He sits down next to Mariam. He takes her arm where the line is attached. One nurse pulls down 20 mils of blood from the bag, hands it to Junior. He pushes it through and hands back the empty syringe, ready to receive the next one. And so the cycle begins, pushing 20 mils by 20 mils blood in through the IV line, and this cycle goes on. And I'm watching nervously. And I've got the probe. I'm attaching it to her feet, looking at it obsessively. And finally, I start to see this little flicker. Some numbers are coming up on the screen. It's picking up something. And the numbers aren't good, but they're numbers. They're there. This is progress. So now we're on the 3rd or 4th cycle of the blood going in by the syringe. I'm just obsessively repositioning the probe. Got to find some numbers. Got to get that reading that's telling me something's going right here. And I'm just feeling the pulses in her feet. And finally, I think, oh yeah, I can actually feel a pulse in her foot now. I'm sure she's looking a little pinker, less pale, and I'm pretty sure she just moved her arm. And then finally, I can see on the saturation probe the numbers that I'm hoping for, things starting to look better, and I reassess. So airway, A for airway. Now she's not unconscious, her airway's open, she doesn't need that plastic tubing anymore, we take it out. B for breathing. She's now breathing without assistance. I can put the probe on and see that her oxygen saturations are 95% normal. She doesn't need support. C for circulation. Heart rate's coming up now into the normal range, 85, 95, 100. Blood sugar, we record it. Okay, it's low again, but we give another glucose infusion and it comes back into the normal range. And finally, her temperature is up to 36.5. I can see her eyelids are fluttering. She's breathing, her heart's beating, she's alive. And so we decide finally that we can give the rest of the blood in the normal way. We've done the bit that we needed to do for the emergency, and I breathe out, exhale, after all of that adrenaline. I take a few steps back to go to the desk. I need to somehow sort through what's just happened and write it down, document what we've done together. And I position the saturation probe in such a way that I can see from where I'm sitting at the desk, the numbers there, reassuring myself they're still okay. And as I'm writing, I see some movement from her bed. And just like that, Mariam just sits up in the bed, completely alert, eyes open. I'm thinking, oh gosh, like is something wrong? What's happened? She looks kind of scared. And then she just says, I'm thirsty. Can I have some water, please? And everyone on the ward just laughs and is happy to finally see that she's kind of recovered. So Mariam survived, and we all had a skip in our step that day. We couldn't stop talking about her. And the community of Bambari and the staff of Bambari Hospital, they've seen a lot of sick children die. And that day, a very sick child indeed survived. And there was a sense of hope. There was a sense of hope in the hospital among the staff. And for me, at the beginning of my assignment with MSF, the hope was one that, despite all of the challenges that I was just starting to encounter and understand, I could sense that as a team, we were going to be able to save more seriously unwell children. And for the nurses who worked in Bambari Hospital for so many years, having the support of an organization which is providing the technical resources, medicines, training, a blood transfusion service, for them to be able to do their job well, that empowerment, that is also a cause for hope. But of course, the most important thing was that for Mariam and her family, there was hope coming from the fact that they knew now that there's a hospital in their community that has the staff and it has the resources to be there for them when they're sick. And even though I know that it's not enough to address all of those dangers that children are facing in Bambari and across the Central African Republic, this is just a little piece of hope. So thank you. I'm going to show you some images. I'm hoping if I can figure out how to share my screen well, I'm going to show you some pictures from the hospital. So I'm hoping you can see this. Oh no, I've gone there. Here we are. So this is just to show you where the Central African Republic is, right in the middle of the continent with the surrounding countries here. And this is what the outside of the hospital looks like. So it's the same entrance which the patients use and which we use as staff coming in and out. And that's one of the MSF vans going out there. And here is the triage that I was talking about at the beginning. So you can see these kind of semi-solid structures. This is where all of the kind of A&E emergency care was happening for the first kind of months that I was in Bambari. We then built a kind of permanent structure, which is where I'm standing taking this photo, which was more appropriate once we were able to do that. But this is where we saw Mariam when she first came in. And this image is showing the inside of the hospital grounds. And you can see for Mariam, I hope you can see my mouse, but for Mariam, we had to carry her up from this area, up this hill. And the intensive care is some way behind where this photo is taken from. So you can kind of get a sense of the terrain and the infrastructure of the hospital that you have to deal with when you're moving patients around. And then finally, there's this image, which is taken from the intensive care ward of Bambari Hospital. The intensive care ward's only for children. And you can see these are the kind of beds that we had there. This is the sort of spacing that we had between the beds. And this is Nurse Karine moving one of the oxygen concentrators to a patient who needs oxygen. So you can get a bit of a sense of the types of conditions in which patients are receiving care in Bambari. So that is all from me. I'm so sorry that I can't answer your questions. I'm sure that others will do a fantastic job of it, and have a nice evening.
Before I introduce our third storyteller, I thought I should perhaps just say a couple of words very briefly about MSF as an organization. I suspect that most of you know at least something about it. It is, of course, as you would expect from its name, a medical humanitarian organization. It works in over 70 countries now. It delivers medical aid, of course, not only in countries of conflict like Afghanistan and Central African Republic, but in countries which are stricken by epidemics, by natural man-made disasters, and anywhere really where people for any reason are excluded from access to proper health care. MSF was originally founded back in 1971 by a group of French doctors and journalists. In the 50 plus years since then, it has grown into a genuinely worldwide organization. Believe it or not, it now employs over 45,000 staff. So if you are or have been or are thinking of becoming a donor to MSF, it will be money well spent. So on now to our third storyteller. He's not here, I'm afraid. But like Prue, he does have a very good excuse. He has just been sent at very short notice by MSF to Nigeria. And when MSF sends you off on assignment, you don't stop, you just go. His name is Moses Soros. He is a finance and human resources manager with an extremely interesting background, some of which I think he's about to tell you. He's worked in the banking sector. He's worked with a variety of international NGOs. More recently, he worked with the Metropolitan Police in London. He's a HR professional. He has worked for MSF in Syria, and he is, as I say, currently in Nigeria. Fortunately for us, before he left, he recorded what he would have said had he been able to be with us tonight. And it is that recording that we are going to play you tonight. So here he is, Moses Soros.
Hello, my name is Moses Simon Soros. I'm here to tell you about my story of hope and how MSF helped me to be what I am today. I was born in South Sudan, but it used to be Sudan. a small town called Yei. In 2011, South Sudan became independent, and the North became a separate country, Sudan. Then we became South Sudan. But before that, of course, the North and the South were in a protracted war that started long before I was born. And it stopped in, I think, 1972. But in 1983, the war started again. The Southerners were fighting for freedom, and they wanted also to have their own country because we were being mistreated by the Northerners. So the war took a lot of lives. A lot of destruction was done. We lived through the war in South Sudan, but it became so apparent and it became so difficult that even when we ran to the villages, we still get bombed by anti-NOP bombers, which are dropping barrels of bombs on the civilians. So we could not stay in South Sudan. We had to cross over to refuge in Uganda. That was in the early 1990s. We just crossed in Uganda and were dropped out of a town called Koboko, about 6 miles out of the town. It was just a bush. South Sudanese refugees were just dropped there. And we had no tents, we had no tukuls, nothing. All of us were exposed to the elements. We were young kids that time. And I'm from a polygamous family. My father could not afford to construct for us houses or tukuls. It was until MSF came in that we received tents. And of course, also MSF set up a dispensary, which was very helpful that time, because at the time, there was outbreak of malaria, because sleeping outside, mosquitoes, we would have no mosquito nets. Of course, also there was an outbreak of cholera, because it was rainy time and people were having no pit latrines. So people were excreting outside, and that also caused a lot of cholera. A lot of people died in Uganda that time. The camp was called Beng. A lot of people died because of diarrhea and mosquito bites for the kids. I lost quite a few of my relatives, but of course others were saved, including me, by MSF, because I fell sick and I was treated in that dispensary of MSF. So that touched me a lot. Up to today, I think, had MSF not to come, then probably I could have not been here talking to you. I would be dead also like my other siblings who died young with preventable diseases, but because we're exposed to the element, because of the poverty, because of the troubles we had, because of the war, could not come with all that we had. Refugee life is a bit difficult. It's not a very easy life. Been there, it's a very difficult one. But this message of hope comes in because without MSF, I would have not been what I am. Without MSF, my siblings will not be what they are. Without MSF, probably I've not gone to school because they kept me healthy. That was how I went to school and I would go study. So I made a promise to myself and to my family that one day when I grow up, when I finish studies, I would love to be a part of MSF and I would like to serve humanity in the most desperate situations that MSF also finds people in. I would love to give my help. I would like to help the needy because that is the right thing to do. So after independence, of course, I studied in Uganda all this time. Then I crossed to Britain. I came to Britain transferring my refugee status from Uganda to Britain. And in Britain, thankfully, I was given refugee status. And I continued in my studies. I completed a master's degree in international relations at Keele University, thinking I was going to work in the Foreign Office of South Sudan when South Sudan became independent in 2011. I returned to South Sudan and I worked as a bank manager. I worked with some international NGOs, Democracy International and International Republican Institute, where I was training MPs, all the MPs in South Sudan, the state government and the national legislature on good governance, accountability, constituent outreach, how they can oversight the government so that at least there's transparency and accountability. And of course, in essence, there'll be good governance in South Sudan. That was the intention. Doing that, some politicians became very interested in what I was doing, and I got appointed one of the political positions as a commissioner of Morobo County. That's the county where I come from originally. My parents, though I was born in Yei, the nearest county. So I went and worked in Morobo as a commissioner. Then after, became a state minister of finance. When Yei became a state, when the states were divided into 32 states. After that, I decided, I said, no, I'll have to leave because the war is continuing now, this current civil war in South Sudan. And our people are going again for refuge. And this time I'm also a decision maker. So that became a bit a conflict for me. So I decided to resign from my position as a state minister of finance. Then I came to the UK and I went back to university to study human resource management because I've seen in MSF's job adverts, the only job that I could do, because I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, the only job that I can do is support the medical teams. So I decided to go to university and studied a master's degree in human resource management at University of Westminster. When I completed, I applied to MSF and I went through the application process and I got offered the position as a finance and human resource manager. That was when I was offered a position in Syria. So I went to Syria, and in Syria I was working in two projects. One was for non-communicable diseases like diabetes, tuberculosis, and the other one was to treat TB in one of the detention centers for ex-fighters. So those are the two projects that we did in Syria. I, of course, told the Syrians, the colleagues that I work with, my experience. I told them I was once a refugee. I know how it feels to be displaced in your own country. I know how it feels to be helpless within your own country. But let them be hopeful because these things will not last forever. One day, they will live life as free citizens of Syria. They should have hope, like what I had. I knew one day I will not be a refugee forever, but I will be somebody who can also help refugees be okay. So that's how I became, I encouraged my team. I focus, of course, on administrative aspects to allow the project run smoothly. Of course, I dealt with the recruitment. We dealt with the implementation of MSF policies. We dealt with encouraging people to have, of course, respect for the work they do, training, shadowing them, build their confidence, of course, and so that the team will be prolific like what I really wanted them to be, and they were really hardworking and all this. So, of course, when I was working the tuberculosis project, one day I went to visit to see the people that I work for, the people who are receiving our services. When I went and I saw a plum peanut that was given to them because they were a bit malnourished, immediately that brought memories flowing. I told my colleagues, this was the thing that saved me too. Without the plumpy nut, I would have been dead. I was malnourished. The plumpy nut helped me to recover. And that was what MSF was giving the detainees. So I took one, I kept it on my desk. My intention was to bring it and show it to my children. Because I kept telling them that this was something that helped me, but they didn't know, they didn't see, even they don't know what it is. On giving them photos, they could not understand. So I had to bring it. Unfortunately, when I was leaving Syria, I was in a hurry. I didn't go back to the office. I forgot. But luckily enough, MSF posted for me one, and I showed them how a plum peanut looks like. All in all, it was a privilege working for MSF. I don't regret doing it. I'm in fact very happy to help humanity, to also provide the services that I was once given. I feel indebted to MSF, so I want to do it to help other people help themselves, like how I've also benefited. And today also I'm a decision maker in MSF, making sure that these services, these projects, the help that we give people, it's free, and of course it's impartial. And this is the reason also why I left politics, because I don't want to conflict with the MSF's ethos of being impartial, being political neutral. That's what I've embraced now. That's why I'm very happy going where the need is. Wherever there is need, I'm happy to go and help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Moses. Just in addition to that, could you tell us a little bit about the work you're now doing in Nigeria with MSF?
Okay. I've been working with the Metropolitan Police in the new project of graduate police officers, but I've realized this is not the core that I really wanted. So I've decided to put myself available, and MSF has offered me a position in northwestern Nigeria in a place called Zamfara. I'll be going there on the 1st of December to do exactly what I did in Syria: recruitment, coaching, training, handling the finances of MSF to make sure everything that we do is transparent, and of course also model the team to be good MSF staff, and of course to work for the causes that MSF believes in. So that's what I'll be going to do in Nigeria.
I don't know if that's a unique story, but it must be a very unusual story, I would have thought, in MSF, to have somebody who was himself a recipient of MSF services as a young refugee, now working in a highly responsible managerial position in MSF. And a marvelous example, again, I think, of this theme of hope that we were talking about earlier, and what he was saying to the people he was working with in Syria. Now, our fourth speaker this evening is a hugely experienced MSF project coordinator. She's been with MSF since 2016. She has done 8 assignments for MSF as a project coordinator. She's worked in the Central African Republic, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in South Sudan. She's been on search and rescue mission on the Ocean Viking ship. She's been in Syria, in Haiti, and in Yemen. In fact, she returned from Yemen just a few months ago in the summer of this year. She's now working as a project and program management specialist at Plan International. Her name is Rita Benjaloun. I should warn you that she's in a state of heightened excitement this evening because Morocco have just beaten Spain on penalties in the World Cup. Rita.
Okay. I have to say also I'm very nervous, so I apologize if I lose my words. My name is Rita, and I joined MSF in 2016. I had my first mission in CAR, and it ended very badly. I got burned out and been sent home after 6 months instead of doing my 9 months. I was working very, very hard. I jumped into the humanitarian world with a lot of enthusiasm and dedication, working 14 to 16 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week, and spending the rest of my time looking after my team, completely forgetting to look after myself and getting the much needed rest that is necessary to complete such long assignments. So after a few months of rest, I gave it another try. And since then, it's just been an amazing experience after an amazing experience. I think you mentioned all the missions I've been, but the last one was Yemen, and I will tell you a story about Yemen. But before that, I will start by telling you a little bit about my job as a project coordinator. So I think it's quite straightforward to know what a nurse is doing or what a doctor is doing, but I think for the other profiles like logisticians and HR and finance and project coordinators, it's a bit more vague, I suppose. So I'll start with that. As a project coordinator, my two main responsibilities. So the first one is to manage the team. So make sure all the support departments, which are HR, finance, logistics, and supply chain, are working together to make available all the resources for the medical team to do their job and save lives. And this is the fun part of my job. The other part of my job is I'm security responsible for the team. And that's a very, very, very stressful thing to do because I have to make sure my team is safe. And when you're working in a very high insecure context like Syria or DRC or even Haiti or recently Yemen, on a daily basis, I have to make very difficult decisions about movements, letting my team go to the hospital. Is it safe? Is it not safe? Making sure the place where we stay is protected, making sure there are security protocols, everyone is following them. And yeah, that is definitely the biggest challenge for me, is to find that right balance between taking an acceptable level of risk, as we call it in MSF, and making the operations possible. Sorry, I'm a little bit shaky. Okay, Morocco won today. Yay! As you all understood, I'm from Morocco originally. So, story about Yemen. I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of information about the Yemen context. So the war started in Yemen in 2015. The war basically split the country in two. So people know of Yemen, but it's actually two countries going on now with two governments, two currencies, and a front line separating the two. And despite the continuous several truces that are signed by both parties, fighting is actually ongoing, and people are still dying every day because of the bombing, the shelling, the shooting, and also because there is no access anymore to basic healthcare or clean water or food. So this is Yemen in few words. Then there is Taiz city. So the country is split in two. The north is under the Houthi control, and the south is under the internationally recognized government. And I was assigned to a city called Taiz, which is in the south part of the country. So Taiz is it's located in a very high mountains, and it's a 7 hours drive from Aden. Aden is the only airport, one of the only airports left in the southern part, and this is where MSF international team arrives. We can't fly to Yemen. We have to go to Djibouti and then take a little MSF or ICRC plane to get to Yemen. So we arrive to Aden and then have to drive 7 hours through this very beautiful landscape of first desert and then mountains. And then we arrive to this very nice but heavily destroyed city of Taiz city. Okay. So the entire city itself is split by the front line. We were basically based at about 1.2 miles from the front line. So on a daily basis, we could hear the shelling and the shooting, and sporadic fighting and injuries from snipers will remain a problem because of the blockage and the fighting. Getting anything out or in of Taiz it's a big challenge. And in the case of my story, the shortage was fuel. So I think it was there for a couple of weeks. And on a Friday morning, very early, I received a call from the hospital, from some staff saying that the hospital was shutting down. MSF runs the maternity unit in this hospital. So MSF was in Taiz, was one of the first organization actually in Taiz. And the only organization with international staff presence since 2017. The other NGOs think it's too risky, it's too unstable and too volatile context to have international staff. So we were the only international staff in Thai city. And in 2017, MSF was mainly a donation program. So we were giving supplies and incentive to Ministry of Health to run 3 hospitals. But in 2021, June 2021, MSF made a decision to have more hands-on work and take on the maternity maternity unit in one of the hospitals. So that was that's the hospital I'm talking about. I received the call. That's where my team works, and I received the call saying that the hospital was shutting down because they have no fuel. So. Okay, a little bit of a moment of panic. So first of all, I need to verify the information. So I called the hospital director and say, I heard this rumor, is it true? He said, yeah, it's true. I said, what about our maternity? He said, your maternity is still running, but not for very long. I said, what does that mean exactly? He said 6 hours. So they had 6 hours of fuel. So I asked about the ER as well, even though we are not responsible of the ER. Emergency room is also one key department that needs to stay open. So we had 6 hours to find fuel or another solution. So I obviously called all my team, even though it was Friday and it's a day off. Friday is day off in Yemen. But we all sat around the table and I said, we need to find a solution. So I asked the medical team to first assess the situation in terms of number of patients that we have in the hospital, how many patients are in a critical state, how many babies are in the incubator, how many we can send home, how many we can't, and for those who we can't, what is the option, where can we send them, what are the other hospitals around where we can refer them to. And then with the logistic team, I started trying to find fuel. So that's of course, the best solution is to find fuel, but plan B would be to find a place to refer the critical patients. By that time, I walked down to the house. We live in the base is split between the house and the offices. So by that time, I walked to the offices and the national staff, the logistic team, Hakim and Hakim, it's the logistic supervisor and the logistic manager. A lot of people are called Hakim in Yemen. They were already there. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning and they were already there. It's amazing and very, very committed people. That was one of the best things for me working in Yemen is the commitment and the dedication of the national staff. Very hardworking, very trustworthy, and very dedicated to what they do. They were already there. They'd already been to the hospital to verify the information because they didn't really trust the hospital manager. So we had 100% accurate information. There were about 6 hours of fuel left in the hospital. So I called the supply manager, who was a female, the only female working in the logistic team. And I asked her to work on this, and she was very apologetic because she said, "I'm really, really sorry. I can't come to the office. There is a sniper shooting in my street." And I think that's where I really realized that what crazy world these people are living in on a daily basis. I mean, we go on assignment for a few months. We go there, and we leave. and we leave a little piece of our heart, as my colleague said. It's very true. But this is their daily life. This is what they live in. And I said, I totally understand. You don't need to come in. But she said, luckily today network is working, because also nothing is reliable in this context. Network works once every now and again. Nothing is reliable. So she said, but good news is network is working today, so I can make some calls. So she started making calls, and yeah, no one could deliver. First of all, it was Friday, and then it was Eid holiday. So it was the worst combination of circumstances. Welcome to Yemen. So I was like, okay, we need to, she was calling everyone. We were begging, we were asking colleagues, other organizations, Ministry of Health, everyone who could possibly have fuel to give us or sell us fuel, anything. But there were nothing. And then at this moment, an Australian midwife just started shouting, let's use Olivia's fuel. So Olivia, to give you a little bit of background story, Olivia was the WATSAN. So WATSAN means water and sanitation. She's also from the UK, and she was in the project. She left by that time. She just left about a week before, and she spent the last 6 months, the 6 months of her mission building and setting up an incinerator space. And training the team to learn how to use it, because waste management is a disaster in these kind of places. So big part of her job was to set up this incinerator, and she built and secured this room where the fuel for the incinerator was, and she made sure that no one would use her fuel because she knows about the shortage, and she wanted to make sure her activities the activities of the team she left behind was going to go smoothly. So there were 2 keys that no one knew where they were except Olivia was back in the UK playing football with her nephews, and the WhatsApp manager who was on holiday because it was Eid and it was Friday. But we managed to get in touch with him, and we managed to find where the key was hidden. It was very well hidden. And obviously I texted Olivia and said, I'm sorry, I'm going to use your fuel, but I promise I will refill it as soon as we can. So we found the key. We ran to the hospital. We opened the room, and here we go. There were 1,500 liters of fuel. It's probably about enough to keep us going for a day, which was enough for the other suppliers to deliver. So great, we found the fuel. Now we had to take the fuel from the incinerator space to the generator space, and that was in the other side of the hospital. And we had no what's the word? Pump. We had no pump to pump the fuel from the tank and transport it. And by that time, we still had about 3 hours left on the 6 hours we were given to start with. So the team and also people from the community just started doing it literally by hand. So we just jerry cans, and they were just pumping the fuel manually into the jerry cans and carrying the jerry cans, running to the other side of the hospital and putting it in the generator. And they did that exercise for a couple of hours until we filled up the tank of the hospital. And yeah, so the hospital didn't shut down. And no one died, and all the babies were safe, and all the mothers were safe. So that was a very, very good day, and a great teamwork. And just to give you an idea about the maternity in Thais, when MSF took over that project in June 2021, the number of deliveries were just below 300, and within a month or two, we had over 500 deliveries. I think a little bit like Afghanistan, the team was suffering from the success of MSF because the quality of care just improved and the availability of drugs. And so everyone heard about MSF being in the hospital, and patients just started coming from everywhere, not only Thais, but from everywhere else. So great achievement, but a lot of work for the team. And in terms of mortality, when we came in, the mortality rate for the babies were 25%. So basically, 1 child in 4 was dying at birth. It's just difficult to even have an idea what that means. But a year after, we dropped it to 10%. I mean, the team, I didn't do much, but yeah, it was 10%. So an amazing achievement. And while I was there, we didn't have any maternal death. So you could really see the difference that MSF is making in this kind of context and the hope it's giving to the community. This is the end of my story.